Vivid verses.
I just don't think I can keep doing this if you're not here. 3 months, and if nothing's changed, I don't know. I really don't know. You have to understand how we got here first, because if I just hand you that line without the context, it sounds like a reasonable thing to say. Two people, different cities, real logistics. Sure, but that's not what it was. Sola and I had been together for almost 2 years by the time she said that. A year and 8 months, to be exact, and I'm being exact on purpose. In the first 6 months, the distance was a project we were both working on, calls every night, visits every 5 weeks, a shared note on our phones where we'd been quietly cataloging what a move might look like and who might do it. That note existed. I want you to remember that. Then somewhere around month 9 or 10, the note stopped getting updated. I kept adding things. She stopped responding to the ones I added. I noticed, but didn't say anything because I told myself people get busy, people have phases, and I didn't want to be the person who turns every quiet patch into a referendum on the relationship. That was the first place I let something go that I shouldn't have. The visits started being harder to schedule. Not impossible, I was still making the drives, still booking the trains, still showing up, but harder on her end to commit to. She confirmed late, sometimes change plans the morning of. I adjusted. I'm good at adjusting. I kept adjusting long past the point where adjusting was reasonable, and I think part of me knew that even then, but I kept filing it under rough patch because I genuinely liked her and I wanted the rough patch to be what it said it was. Then one Tuesday night in October, she said what she said. I'd taken a 4-day weekend to visit. Burned 2 PTO days, which I had 4 of left for the year. We were sitting in her kitchen after dinner. She'd cooked, which she was good at. Linguine was something she'd been working on for months. And the conversation had been comfortable right up until it wasn't. She was talking about her friend Adiz, new place 2 blocks away, and how nice it was that they could just walk to each other now. And there was this particular wistfulness in her voice that I recognized, but couldn't quite place, and then she set her fork down and said it. I just don't think I can keep doing this if you're not here. 3 months, and if nothing's changed, I don't know. I really don't know. I didn't say anything right away. I picked up my glass and took a sip of water and set it back down. She's given me a timeline. She used the word can't. She means won't, but she said can't. That's a load-bearing distinction. 3 months. The kitchen was quiet. She was watching me the way people watch you when they've said something large and aren't sure where it landed. I told her I heard her, that I'd take it seriously. She looked almost surprised. I think she expected either resistance or immediate agreement, and I gave her neither. Just acknowledgement. I drove home the next morning. For hours. And I thought about it the entire way. Here's the thing about auditing a relationship. You don't want to do it. It feels clinical. It feels like you're building a case instead of being a person. But sometimes the case builds itself whether you want it to or not, and the only choice you have is whether to look at it honestly. And that's when I started doing the math. The drives first. I made 19 of them in a year and 8 months. I counted I have the gas receipts, and she'd made 6. I didn't hold that against her at the time. She had a more demanding schedule. I had a car with better mileage. I told myself it was fine because I meant it when I said it. But 19 to 6 isn't a gap you explain away with scheduling. That's a pattern. 19. 6. Say it again until it means something. The shared note. I'd added 31 items to it. Research I'd actually done, cost of living comparison, a list of companies in her city that operated in my field, 2 job listings I'd screenshotted and actually read. She'd added 4. The last entry she'd made was from month 7. I was building a plan. She was watching me build it. The PTO. I'd spent 11 of my 16 annual days on travel to see her, that year alone. She'd used one of hers. For a visit she'd cut short by a day because her friend needed help moving. I'd said it was fine. I'm in it then too. I'm still not sure if that makes it better or worse. There was a dinner I'd missed with my brother in the spring. He was in town for 3 days. We'd planned it for weeks, and Sola had had a hard week and asked if I could come that weekend instead of the following one. I rearranged. I didn't tell him why. He was gracious about it. She never knew about it because it didn't occur to me to say anything, and because at the time it felt like the obvious right call. It wasn't. I was quietly, consistently choosing her over things I didn't tell her I was choosing her over. That's not generosity. That's secrecy dressed up as sacrifice. There was the least question. 6 months in, she'd asked casually what I thought about renewing my lease versus going month to month. I'd gone month to month. That cost me $140 extra per month. I'd done it for 8 months, so roughly $1,100 in flexibility premium I paid, so I could theoretically move faster if we got there. She knew I'd gone month to month. She didn't know why. I never told her. There was the job conversation in August. Her company had an office in my city. Smaller, less senior, but real. She'd mentioned it once and then never mentioned it again. I thought about asking what happened with it. I hadn't asked. 6 items. And I could keep going. The picture that emerged wasn't of a villain. That's not what I was building toward. It was the picture of 2 people who had made very different quiet decisions about how much of themselves to put into the middle of this thing, and only one of them had noticed the imbalance. And that one person was me, sitting in my apartment on a Wednesday night, looking at a note on his phone that he'd been updating alone for 8 months. She wasn't bad. She was comfortable. And comfort, when it goes unexamined, becomes something you mistake for an arrangement. I knew what I was going to do. I knew it cleanly, without drama. I was going to take her at her word. 3 months. I was going to treat it as the real ultimatum it was. Research it, visit it, genuinely sit with it. Because if I was going to say no at the end, I wanted to say no knowing I'd actually tried. And if the answer at the end was still no, then I'd have my answer, and so would she. Do the work. Then decide. Whatever you find, you'll know it's real. I didn't tell anyone. I went to sleep. The first thing I did was make a spreadsheet. I know how that sounds. I made a spreadsheet. 2 columns. Reasons to move, reasons not to. But not the soft reasons, not I love her on one side, and I'll miss my apartment on the other. Real ones. Cost of living differential. Her city ran about 18% higher across rent, transportation, and groceries based on the 3 neighborhoods closest to her that were realistic. My current salary, what an equivalent role would pay there. I found 2 open positions, sent out 1 inquiry. The job inquiry got a response in 4 days. Not a yes, but a response which told me something. They're not turning away candidates. The market's alive. Second thing, I visited twice more in the 3 months. Not romantic visits, purposeful ones. I walked the neighborhood where she lived like someone who might live there. I went to a coffee shop at 7 in the morning to see who was there. I went to a grocery store alone on a Saturday. I drove her commute at rush hour in both directions. She thought I was being sweet. I was being methodical. Those are not the same thing, though I didn't say that. Third thing, I called my landlord and asked what I need to do to exit my lease in 90 days. Got in writing. Not because I was going to do it, but because I needed to know what it would cost. It would cost 2 months' rent, $1,800 as a buyout. I wrote it in the spreadsheet. Know the price of every option, including the ones you might not take. Fourth thing, I had a phone call with my manager. Didn't mention Sola, didn't mention moving. Just asked about remote flexibility and the policy on role transfers. He said transfers were handled case by case and remote was possible for the right person with the right track record. He said I had the right track record. I thanked him and ended the call. He just told me there's a path. I didn't know there was a path 3 months ago. I know now. Fifth thing, I found an apartment in her city. Not to rent, just to look at. Sent myself the listing. 2 bedrooms, good light, 12 minutes from her by bike. The price was painful, but survivable. I looked at it for probably 10 minutes total over 3 different sessions. Sixth thing, and this is the one that took the most out of me. I told my brother. Not all of it. I told him I was seriously considering relocating and that there were a lot of moving parts. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Is this what you want? Or what she wants?" I told him that was exactly the right question, and I was still working on the answer. He let it rest there. That's why I told him. I was doing the work. Actual work. Not performance. 6 weeks in, I had a clearer picture than I'd had in 2 years. I could move. It was logistically possible. The market would absorb me. The cost was real, but not prohibitive. But it would mean leaving a job I'd spent 4 years building equity in, a neighborhood I knew, and a version of my life I'd chosen carefully. And the reason for doing it was a relationship that had been running on asymmetric effort for over a year in a direction that had never corrected itself. She called every few days during those 3 months. The calls were warm. Good, even. She'd ask how I was thinking about things, and I'd say I was taking it seriously, which was true, and she'd sound pleased, which also told me something. She sounds relieved when I say I'm thinking about it. Not engaged, relieved. Those are different. I didn't flag it. I kept doing the work. Week 11. We were on the phone a Sunday night. She'd been talking about her week, about a Dee's birthday dinner coming up, about a weird interaction at work. And then she mentioned, in the same tone she'd used for all of it, that she'd been talking to her friend Kofi about long-distance relationships in general. And she said, I think I was just venting when I said the 3 months thing. I didn't actually think you were going to research it seriously. I was frustrated. You know how I get. I didn't say anything. There it is. I didn't say anything for a moment. She was venting. 19 drives. 11 PTO days. 31 notes. A spreadsheet. 2 extra visits. A call with my manager. A lease inquiry. A conversation with my brother where I watched his face try to stay neutral. All of that. And she was venting. I took your words at face value, I said, because I respect you. You should probably do the same for me, but you don't. She started talking right away, explaining. She said she hadn't meant to be dismissive. She was just trying to say she hadn't wanted to pressure me. She was actually touched that I'd taken it so seriously. I heard you, I said. That was the last thing I said that night. I'll let her finish. I thanked her for the call. I said I'd think, and I would be in touch. I hung up and sat with it. I was venting. She said it like it excuses the 3 months. It doesn't. It indicts them. Here's what I knew. I wasn't moving. That had been calcifying for a few weeks. The spreadsheet, the walk through, the morning coffee shop, the commute. All of it had been pointing toward a conclusion I'd been honest enough to let land. The answer was no. Not because of the logistics, which were solvable, but because you don't build a life in a new city for someone who issues ultimatums she doesn't mean and expects you to somehow know which ones to take seriously. But I also wasn't staying. That was the part one was still sitting with. I didn't call anyone. I just sat, venting. That's the word she used. I've been using the word ultimatum for 11 weeks. We were never in the same conversation. The call started 3 days later. First was her friend Adiz. She texted first, "Hey, do you have a minute?" And then called. I let her finish. She'd heard that Solo was upset and wanted to make sure I understood that Solo really cared about me and that the situation had been stressful for her too. I registered all of it. She has Adiz's version, not mine. That's fine. Did she tell you? I said that I'd spent the last 3 months researching the move? The visits, the job inquiry, the conversation with my landlord about the lease buyout. Silence. She didn't mention that. Adiz said. Okay, I said. I thanked her for calling and told her I appreciated it. I ended the call. 14 hours later, her friend Kofi. He was warmer about it. We'd met a few times, had some shared interests. He wasn't calling to lecture me. He was calling because he was worried about her. I let him finish. He genuinely likes her. This isn't hostility. That makes it easier. Did she tell you what she said when I told her I'd been taking it seriously? Pause. Not exactly, he said. She said she'd been venting. I said. that she hadn't actually expected me to research it, that she didn't think I was going to take it seriously. I waited. He said quietly, "Oh." I thanked him. We hung up. The next one was her co-worker, Imani. She and Sola had been close for 2 years. They'd been in the same department, and I'd met her at dinner once and liked her. She called on a Wednesday afternoon. She was the most direct. She said she thought I was being cold and that relationships required flexibility and that Sola was hurting. I let her finish completely. She said cold. There's that word. I'll note it and let it go. Did Sola tell you that I'd taken PTO to visit her twice during this period specifically because I was seriously considering a move? That I'd actually inquired about a job at her city and gotten a response. The silence was longer this time. She told me you'd visited. Imani said, slowly. She didn't say the reason. Okay, I said. Thanked her. Ended the call. And then, I kid you not, the next one called 20 minutes later. Her college friend Bex. I didn't know Bex well, but Sola talked about her often, and she'd clearly gotten a call at some point in the last 72 hours. She said she wanted me to know that ultimatums came from fear and that Sola wasn't trying to be manipulative. She was just scared. I heard her out completely. Fear and accountability aren't mutually exclusive. I can hold both without choosing either. Did she tell you she told me she was just venting? After 11 weeks of me treating it as real. Bex exhaled. No, she said. She didn't say that. Okay, I said. I thanked her. The fifth call was different. It came from Sola's older sister, Remy. I'd met Remy 4 times, twice at holidays, once at a birthday, once for a completely random dinner that Sola had arranged on about 2 days' notice. Remy and I had gotten along easily, the way you do with people who are direct and don't have a hidden agenda. She called on a Thursday morning, and I answered without knowing exactly what I was in for. She didn't defend Sola. She said, I need to tell you that I know what she said when you told her you'd been doing the research. She told me, and I think she knows she messed up, but she's struggling to admit it. And I don't think you're the one at fault here. There it is. Register it. Don't let it change your face. I thanked her. I told her I appreciated her saying it. She asked if there was any possibility of repair, and I told her honestly that I wasn't sure yet, but I wasn't making decisions from a place of anger. She said she believed me. We said goodbye. I sat with that one differently. Not with satisfaction. More like the finality of a test result you already suspected but needed to see printed. Her own sister. That was the story tipping, quietly, where Sola couldn't control it anymore. That night, Sola called. Not warm this time. The warmth had burned off. I feel like you've been turning everyone against me, she said. There's the accusation. She needed to land it somewhere. Here it is. I haven't spoken badly about you to anyone, I said. I've answered questions with facts. That's different. You're being so calculated, she said. This isn't how people act in relationships. I've been acting this way our entire relationship, I said. The only difference is you're noticing now. She had more to say. I'll let her say it. When she finished, I told her I needed a few days and that I'd reach out. I said goodnight. I was not angry. I want to be clear about that. I was finished, which feels different. She texted 4 days later. Can we talk? I want to actually talk. We got on a call that evening. She was quieter than I'd heard her in months. Not subdued, but careful. She asked me to let her go first, and I said okay. She said, I've been thinking about what you said, that you took my words at face value because you respect me. I've been sitting with that all week, and I think the reason it landed the way it did is because it was true. I was testing you. I know I was. And when you actually passed the test I'd set up, I panicked and called it venting because I didn't know what to do with the fact that you'd actually shown up. She named it. She actually named it. Most people never name it. I'll let the silence sit for a moment. Okay, I said. She said she'd canceled 2 trips she'd had planned. A girls' weekend that had already been booked and a long weekend to see Bex, to come visit me instead. She said she'd looked at my city the way I'd looked at hers. She said she'd reached out to her HR department about the satellite office situation and asked specifically about transfer eligibility. I didn't respond to that yet. I let her keep going. She said she'd gone back to the note on our phones. She'd added 6 things in the last 4 days, more than she'd added in the previous year. She told me the date and time of each entry. She had that information ready, which told me she'd thought about this the way I think about things, and I noted that. She said, "I know I'm doing this quickly, and I know that probably seems like speed doesn't matter," I said. "The question is whether it's real." "How will you know if it's real?" she asked. "How will I know?" "That's the right question." She finally asked the right question. "I don't know yet," I said. "But you'll know, because you'll still be doing it in 6 months when there's no urgency." She was quiet. Her friend Kofi, she told me later, had apparently said something to her after our call that stuck with her. He'd told her that the way I described what I'd done in those 3 months didn't sound like someone performing effort. It sounded like someone who had genuinely tried to give her what she asked for and been told, at the end, that the asking hadn't been real. He'd said it gently, she told me, but he'd said it clearly. Her sister Remy had said something too, privately, that's solar-relayed, that the way she described my response, calculated, said more about what she'd been expecting than about who I actually was. That she'd expected panic or anger, and when she'd gotten neither, she'd mislabeled clarity as coldness. Imani had sent her a voice note, apparently, with a single question. "Did you think about what he gave up to take you seriously?" I didn't ask for any of that. I want to be clear. I hadn't said anything about those people except what I knew, and what I knew was factual. But facts are persistent. You can't unsay them just because you wish they hadn't been said. There was one more thing she told me, and I'll tell you it the same way she told me, quietly, without fanfare. She said, "I found a receipt from when you went month to month on your lease. You show me your spreadsheet, and I counted the note entries. I owe you that. I really do." She wasn't wrong. One of her friends, I think it was Imani, though I'm not certain, had apparently flagged to her how fast she was moving to fix things, and she'd said, I know it's fast, but I spent a year watching him move slowly and carefully in my direction, and I owe him the same urgency he gave me." I heard about that secondhand, and I let it land without comment. We weren't finished, she and I. I want to be careful about how I say that. We weren't done as people. There was still something there, and she'd earned the right to find out if it was something real by being honest about what she'd done. But we weren't the same as we'd been. Some things, once examined, don't reassemble the same way. That's not a bad thing, necessarily. It's just what's true. I didn't move. I'd known for weeks I wasn't going to move. I didn't end it, either. Not that night. What I did was tell her, "I took your words at face value because I respect you. I need you to understand that I still do." Which means when I say I'm not sure yet, that's not a test. That's the truth. She said, "I know. I'm finally learning what that sounds like. Here's the thing I've come to, and I'm not trying to wrap this up with a bow because it doesn't have one. You can love someone and still require that they mean what they say. Those two things are not in conflict. The version of love that lets you off the hook for your own words isn't love, it's convenience. And I've spent too many years being patient with people who mistook my patience for permission. I took her seriously because that's what respect looks like. She called it venting. I call it showing you exactly who both of us are. The distance was never the problem. The only distance that actually mattered was the one between what she said and what she meant and whether she was ever going to close it. She was in the end. Not because I pressured her, because I didn't.
Thanks for listening.